Click here at any time to view the post on. Okay. Hopefully, we are still live. Today is the first time where I'm trying to go live with both YouTube and Facebook. So, G Money, if you're out there, man, make a comment. Let me know that you're there. That this thing is actually broadcasting. If not, then I'll have to cancel out uh, and get rid of. I'm doing it through a program called Restream. Restream through Ecamm Live allows you to stream up to 30 different sites at the same time. So YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Instagram. You can do it through all of these sites at the same time, even though they have different limitations on them. And today is the first time that I am trying to do that. So hopefully it is going well. I won't know unless somebody makes a comment and say yay or nay that they're on or they're not on. Uh, Today, I was up until 5 o'clock in the morning working on the script for today, working on thumbnails for today. And I got a call this morning about 9:30. So about 4.5 hours, about 4 hours sleep. And I was made aware of another killing, another African American man, another African American period, killed by police, by those that are sworn to serve and protect. Now, look, I'll be the first one to tell you I know that all police are not bad, but I'll also be the first one to tell you that I remember a friend of mine, Caucasian, saying to another Caucasian uh, who really didn't know that not all black people are criminals. Look, what happens is you will have 10% of whatever population, and it doesn't even take 10%, but generally it's about 10% that labels the entire population, whether it be African Americans. You know, African Americans have had thoughts about white people. White people were a certain way. You know, when I've shared with you that my family moved to California from Alabama when I was 8 years old. And when I came, I had a preconception about white people. And that was one that primarily that none of them liked me because I was black. And that was the only reason why they didn't like me. And there were some white people in California who I would say showed that to be true, but it's not true about all white people. I did learn that. Matter of fact, when I was a kid, one of the things I was concerned about was being called an Uncle Tom because one of my best friends was Caucasian. But look, I'm gonna tell you what saddens me. What saddens me is that Monday, while I was uh, honoring our veterans, all of our veterans, in particular the men in my family, but I was honoring all of our veterans. While that was going on Monday, there was a white police officer in Minneapolis had his had his knee on a man's neck, choking him to death, while the man was begging for him to stop, while the man was begging for help, to no avail. The officer just continued. And what I would tell you is that these guys are supposed to be trained to subdue someone, but not to death. This was in the street. He had the guy in the street handcuffed. The guy was handcuffed with his knee on his neck while the man was begging for his life, and the officer showed no mercy whatsoever. The other sad part about it is that there were at least three other officers right there. Matter of fact, I watched the video. I couldn't tell, but it looked like one of the guys was coming up and taking his vital signs and then just walked off. So the title of today's episode is How much more? How much more? Now, I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. You know, I have to do my daily uptake on COVID 19. And right now, we're looking at over 99,000 people that have died from COVID 19 just in this country, over 300,000 worldwide. Why is America the most powerful country in the world? Why is America the richest country in the world? Why is America the country that has the richest man in the world? Why is America supposedly the land of the free, the home of the brave? Why is America leading the world in deaths of COVID 19? Why is that? Somebody let me know. Why is that? I have no clue. 99,000 people have died, over 99,000 have died in this country, and people are still dying every day from COVID 19. I don't get it. Maybe somebody can help me with that. In France, they have outlawed the drug, what is it, chloroquine or whatever it's called, the drug that our president said that he is taking to prevent getting COVID 19. The drug that our leader, our president, boldly, proudly stated he's taking to prevent getting COVID 19, France has outlawed because it's not safe. Not only that, there are people actually that need that drug. There are people who have ailments that need that drug and are having problems getting it. I talked to someone the other day. Who's taking the drug, who's supposed to be taking, I want to say, if I remember correctly, it's either 2 doses a day or 2 doses a week, something like that, 2 doses, but the dosage has been cut down to one because they're having problems getting the drug after the president made his statement. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I believe a lot of people who are getting the drug are probably not getting it from their doctor, because the person who told me about the drug, who's getting it from their doctor, um, stated that if it's not something that you need for an ailment, that the doctor is not going to prescribe it, and that they're not supposed to prescribe it. It goes against their principles and of being a doctor. So people are probably not getting it through their doctor, but still they're making it difficult for folks who need it to get it. And the folks who are not getting it from their doctor are not probably getting proper prescriptions. And that's what's making it dangerous. This drug can be dangerous. Lord, um, COVID 19. You know what I've been saying every day? Today is our 10th day, and I'm going to say it again. People, please be safe rather than sorry. And as I stated yesterday, I was starting to get a level of comfort because we're going into summer, and I was thinking that COVID-19 is a form of the flu. It's a flu strain. So I was thinking, okay, like the flu, it's probably not going to be as strong going into summer. It's probably not going to be as prevalent. But when you look at the number 2 country in the world that has corona infections, it is a warm weather country. Brazil. Brazil, y'all. Number 2 in deaths, number 2 infections in the world. And Brazil is a warm weather country. As a matter of fact, the part of Brazil that's being affected, it's only 1.9% of the population, but it has more than 50% of infections. The rate of infection is over 50%, and that is in the area of the Amazon, which you know is a warm weather area. So don't drop your guard. Be safe rather than sorry when it comes to this virus. Warm weather, summer or not, be safe rather than Sorry, please. Now, back to George Floyd is the guy's name, is the man's name. George Floyd. And I'm glad to say that I did see that athletes are chiming in about this. These are guys are um, that are looked up to and respected. Could be just primarily because of what they do, but still they have a platform. And I'm glad to see that they are speaking out. I'm calling this a murder, but actually I'm calling it something different than a murder. Do you know that there were over 4,000 African Americans lynched in this country after Civil War? Over 4,000. Now, the numbers say 4,000, but a lot of experts say that it was probably double that because not all of the lynchings were, excuse me, not all of the lynchings were able to be put on record. And what I would tell you is that lynching has not stopped in this country. That's what's going on with particularly African American males are being lynched. Being lynched. You could say that George Floyd was lynched on Monday because the mindset of the people who killed him is the same as the mindset of the people who lynched over 4,000 African Americans after the Civil War ended. The mindset is the same. George Floyd was lynched on Monday. And one of the things that I stated in my description in talking about this show is that there are two things that happen, excuse me. There are two things that happen that allow this. And yes, it's allowed. There are two things that happen in order to enact change. In order for this to stop, two things have to happen. And these two things happened during the civil rights era. Two things had to happen for civil rights to be effective. The first thing is that the people who are being affected, the people who are being murdered, the people whose rights are being forsaken, the people who are being trivialized, they have to rise up together. They have to rise up together. That was the first thing that happened, and that's the first thing that has to happen here. When Cap kneeled for the national anthem to protest, again, murder by those that are sworn to serve and protect, there were petitions that went around. And I received one of them. And what it said was supporting not only Cap, but supporting those that are fighting for justice and to stop these senseless killings. One of the things that people were doing is saying, okay, we're going to boycott the NFL, especially because of the way Cap was treated. I said, I'll join that. I'll join that boycott. But I remember telling some friends of mine that if this is not something that is participated in by the masses, that it won't do any good at all. If the NFL owners think that this is just some humdrum thing, that they're not going to pay attention to it. If you want to see the NFL owners address this thing correctly as far as what was going on with Cap, then you have to hit their pockets. And the only way that was going to happen was if people en masse joined in on the protest. Not only stop watching NFL games, but stop going to NFL games. That's what was going to have to happen, and that did not happen. People did not join in masses. And so what you're saying, whether you realize it or not, is that you were fine with how Cap was treated. A man who stood up for justice was basically blackballed by the NFL. Look, Black people during the civil rights era had to come together and say, we are unifying against these atrocities that are taking place against us. We are unifying together for justice. That didn't, I mean, that did happen in the 60s. That's not happening now. But there's something else that happened that made the civil rights um, protest successful. There was something else that happened, and that has to happen now if these senseless lynchings are going to stop in America. Not only do the people who are being lynched as a people have to stand up in masses and say, we are opposing this, but the majority of people in the country have to recognize what's going on. And a portion of the majority had to join in and take place for real change to be affected during the civil rights era. Now, I understand there's a lot of black folk who don't agree with me, and that's fine. You have your opinion, but this is my opinion. My opinion is that black people as a whole have to stand up and say no more. Now, that doesn't mean that every one out of 100 black folk are doing this, because you're never going to have 100% participation when it comes to change. You're never going to have 100% participation when it comes to people's lives being affected. COVID-19 has proven that. Again, you have governors in certain states whose lives have been threatened when they were trying to save lives. So when people's lives are affected, look, during the civil rights era, during the Montgomery bus boycott, people had to walk 20 miles each way to work because they had to not get on the bus. That had to happen. People had to accept sacrifice. So when it comes to these atrocities, when it comes to these lynchings, we have to be willing to make sacrifices. That didn't happen when Cap took his stand and took a knee. We did not come together as a people, as a whole, and say, this is not right, and we're not going to take it anymore. That's what has to happen now. If you want these police killings to stop, if you want these unjust murders to stop, if you want these lynchings to stop, then people are going to have to come together and say no more. The people who are affected are going to have to come together in the form of the majority of those people and say no more. But there's something else that has to happen. The majority of people in this country have to start with recognizing that this is a lynching and it's unjust. You have to watch the footage of George Floyd being lynched Monday. And then when you watch it, you can't make excuses for it. You can't say, oh, well, he resisted. Because even if he did resist, it was not just cause for murder. These guys are supposed to be trained in how to subdue someone who's resisting without killing them. They didn't even try to do that. And other officers stood around and watched the lynchings. You are just as guilty as the guy who stood with his knee on this man's neck and killed him. So what has to happen is the people who are being oppressed, African American males, African Americans people, have to come together in a majority and say no more. But then the other thing that has to happen is the majority of Americans, Caucasians, Latinos, Asians, have to say this is not right and we are not going to take it anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that the majority of those folks are going to take a stand, because during the civil rights movement, it wasn't the majority of Americans that took a stand, but it was a minority portion of that majority that came forward and marched with African Americans. It was a minority of Caucasians who came forward and said, this is not right. If you go to the Civil Rights Museum in Atlanta, what you will see, and yes, I was surprised, is the number of white folk who actually died for justice. There were a lot of white folk who died alongside of black folk trying to get justice. I'm not suggesting that anyone has to die right now because we've had enough people who have died. What I am saying is this, that this country has to come together and say no more if it's going to stop. Also, there has to be accountability. I understand that the job of a police officer is not easy. You have to understand that going into the job if you are a police officer. I almost became a police officer at one time in my life. The reason why I didn't, and my dad had said this to me, are you going to be okay if you have to kill someone? He said, if you don't know the answer to that, then you should not do this. And I didn't know the answer, so I didn't do it. I worked with a guy when I was at Arco Arena who was actually the chief of security at Arco Arena when I was there. He was one of the training officers for the Sacramento Police Academy, and we talked about stuff like that. And police officers are trained to be able to subdue someone who's resisting. Look, this was a guy who was, from the footage I saw, he was by himself. There may have been someone else in the car with him. They pulled him out of the car. I don't know. But he was by himself. And there were four officers, at least three, just standing around while this was taking place. He was not resisting in the footage that I saw. He couldn't. He was handcuffed with his hands behind his back, down on the pavement with a knee on his neck, begging for mercy, begging for his life. He said, you heard him say, they're going to kill me today. He knew he was going to die. There were people who were on the sidelines, citizens who were pleading with the officers to take his knee off the man's neck. Let him breathe. Let him breathe. And the officers just looked up at them as though, I'm not sure what else to say. This was not planned for today's show, but I'm tired, folks. I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm angry and I'm hurting. I hope you are. I hope you can feel some empathy. I hope that you watch it so you can see what happened. And if that doesn't move you, if that doesn't touch you, something's wrong with you. I'm not going to go on with this much longer. I'm going to end this here. Look, if you have not subscribed to IET with Mike C, I know I haven't even talked about what IET is, what it stands for those on Facebook that are seeing this for the first time. IET stands for Information, Entertainment, and Truth. The truth is the Word of God. The Word of God to me is truth. Subscribe, comment, give a like, thumbs up. I would say have a good day, but it's not a good day. Prayers to the family of George Floyd. That's it, y'all. Have a good day.